Hey DJ, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good?
Yeah, excited to
Yeah,
talk Claude. Yep.
always. Today I kind of just wanted to talk to you about why a lot of people get frustrated when they're first starting out with Claude and any AI in general. Basically, I want to kind of break down the idea of context and how that transforms your AI use and how it can really improve results. Just speaking from experience with like our clients and stuff, have you noticed a lot of people kind of at the first signs of struggle, they kind of get frustrated with AI, especially when they're like starting out and don't know a whole lot.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common. I mean, when people first start using any kind of like chat interface with AI, I think it's really quick things, like, hey, I need a recipe for this, or um, take a picture of my prescriptions. What's in this prescription? So it's like really quick tasks, which are pretty easy to convey. But when you start to do more complicated things where there's like multiple things happening in one request, then I think people uh, they don't get the results that they're looking for necessarily because they think it's just going to provide some magic answer. And by giving it more context, that's when the magic or the light bulb really starts to go off for them. In my opinion, that's really where it starts to happen is when they start to learn how to give more instruction up front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think our analogy that we use often is like, imagine you're giving a task to like a new employee who they don't know what the business does, they don't know any of that. So building that basic understanding within AI is kind of the key. And that's really what context is. It's just giving enough information for the AI to do the task. um, just to kind of start out, I wanted to go through a little more of an in-depth explanation of what context is, because I mean, it's one word, but it encompasses a lot. Um, Whenever people are prompting, I don't think they realize the depth that they can go into that would actually increase the accuracy or how good the responsive AI is. So I just kind of wanted to go through some of these points of like different areas of context. The first one, which I think is kind of overlooked often, is who you are. So, like when you're having that conversation with Claude, explaining what your position is in that task, I think is really important. Um, the example I always like to give is like imagining two different teachers or a teacher and a professor where they're both grading essays. Explaining that you're a fifth grade teacher versus a college level professor is going to have the AI grade in a very different manner, obviously, because you're at two different levels. So that's kind of what encompasses who you are and explaining just a very basic level of kind of positioning that task so it makes a lot more sense for the AI. Um, have you had any experiences where you've noticed a difference in response when you kind of explain your role within a task?
Yeah, it's way different. You're giving AI a point of view, a frame of reference to start from, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. And that's a great example, actually. In fact, probably the majority of large tasks that I'll give AI, it starts with that. It's like, this is who you are, this is who I am, this is what we're trying to do. And we're really kind of like world building at a very small level, right? But we're creating a frame of understanding for those like thoughts to begin. And there's this in copywriting, there's this phrase that content is king. Well, if content is king, then context is the kingdom, right? And so, like, having the lay of the land gives AI a full picture of what you're trying to accomplish, and that helps it produce, I think, what you're trying to create a whole lot faster, and it's way more focused,
Mm-hmm.
purely
Yeah.
by giving it context. So
Yeah.
that's one thing to think. That's one way to think about it, is that content is the king, but context is the kingdom.
I like that. I also think you make a good point of like, it's a quicker way to explain a list of items. So, like in the teacher versus professor example, like you could say, I'm a fifth grade teacher, or you could list out all of the things you're looking for that you would be looking for at a fifth grade level. Like that's the difference. If you say I'm a fifth grade teacher, that's what's great about AI is it has the bearing to understand, oh, okay, then we're probably focused on like very simple sentence structure and grammar. Whereas professor level, you're looking at like, how well did they argue the point? So that's another great thing about AI is it's able to define those like more minute details without you explaining each individual one. And you
Yeah.
also brought up another point when you were talking about how you prompt and kind of moving into the next point is explaining to AI what you want. So, like, that seems simple. It's basically explaining the task that you're actually giving to the AI. But I think people underestimate how much detail is needed in that category just because every small little detail you add in that area of what you want, it can really change how the AI responds. Um, Another example is like explaining or just asking AI to write you an email without giving it any additional information. It'll come up with a very generic answer. Whereas if you explain kind of, I want an email, I want it to be about this long, it needs to be in a professional tone. Like those are the details that really start to get you better results. Um, I know you do a lot of prompting. So how have you kind of learned to develop that skill of understanding how much detail you need to put into what you want the AI to do?
Well, that I don't think there's such thing as too much detail up front in the beginning because really what you're doing is you're filling in the gray areas to get you there quicker. So I would say as far as like a skill in giving context is that it's patience. It's like you have to know up front, I'm gonna want to do this thing, but the very first thing that I have to do is I have to give it context, right? And so like the way I go about it is and I'll try to give an example to illustrate this. Let's say I'm at a garage sale, right? And I come across an item. That item to me looks kind of valuable. It looks vintage. I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is worth something, right? So immediately I think of the TV show like Antique Roadshow or American Pickers, where you have these guys who go out, and these guys are experts. They have like deep knowledge in American history or deep knowledge in art history. And so if I'm at a garage sale and I find a painting and I'm looking at the painting, I might take a picture of it and I'll upload the picture of the painting to Claude. Immediately, Claude will scan it and it will have context of the style of painting that it is. It might understand like the era or the time frame when it came from, maybe what types of artists painted it. And then I might say, okay, this is the painting that I'm looking at. I'm at a garage sale. I'm in this state, right? I'm talking to the person who owns it. They have no clue about it. It was their grandfather's. Help me understand, ask me questions that would help you, right? Figure out if this piece is worth a lot more than it's being sold for. And by doing that, um, then Claude will ask me questions back, right? We'll say, well, flip it over, look on the back. Do you see any kind of signatures on it? Is it framed? Was it pulled off of is it on the original canvas? Those sorts of things, right? And so still, we haven't gotten to the point of, well, is this valuable or not? We're still going through the context piece of um, helping AI understand what it is that we're looking at so that it can then continue to reason and filter out possible matches and getting closer and closer and closer to the one that it thinks that it is, right? So like giving context is really, it's just the act of explaining. It's just the act of having patience and walking through things and asking questions until you get closer and closer and closer. Going back to the original question at the very beginning, I feel like that's where a lot of people get frustrated because they're not ready to do that work. It is work. It's an exercise, right? To go through everything I just mentioned right there. If you weren't expecting it, it would be frustrating. But
Yeah.
once you start to approach it like that as that's your MO, right? Like that's the way that you do it. It just becomes second nature. And then you really start to get really good results back from AI once you really start to understand how to give that level of context. And that's just one example of a painting, and I'm sure you
Yeah.
have others.
I really like how you describe that, mainly because you made a good point in using AI to build the context, like having AI ask you questions back. Because sometimes it's sometimes you don't know what to tell it in order to get what you're looking for. So, like, straight up saying to the AI, keep asking me questions until we're very clear on what we want here, and having the thing actually be your thinking partner and building that context is really cool. I think I've done that subconsciously, but the fact that you explicitly state it is like a really good point. The other piece that you were talking about is people get so frustrated with AI because sometimes it does feel like they're front loading a lot of the work, which in short term, like on a one off task, that makes it feel almost not worth it, like to use AI. Um, but as we'll kind of move through this conversation, the other important piece of context is being able to capture it in a way that AI can reuse over and over again. Because if you're having to world build every single time you want it to do something, it's not worth it. Like you're spending just as much time explaining to AI what you want as it would have taken to just do the task itself. Um, so before we kind of move into that, the last kind of big piece to context is that I wanted to talk about was examples. Giving when you're asking Claude to do something or AI in general, giving it examples of good or bad outcomes. Again, this is more geared towards repeatable tasks. It's if you're doing a one-off task, you wouldn't give it, a bunch of examples because you're trying to get it to do that one thing. But giving examples to show what a good response would be like and a bad response is a really easy way to give the AI an idea of what you're looking for without like explicitly stating it, because it can look at that example and see, okay, this is how they want it structured, these are the kinds of words they want to use. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, show them examples of what to avoid. That's just as powerful because it shows the exact opposite of what you want. um, do you find yourself in like larger workflows, do you find yourself giving AI kind of examples or frameworks to work off of when you're trying to get a specific outcome?
I do, and I think it's just uh, the nature of what I've done my whole career is just in being in design and being in product development. I'm It's kind of like second nature for me personally to develop briefs and very detailed briefs. And the more detail that you give in a brief means the faster the other party will understand what we're trying to accomplish. There's some instances where things are speculative when we talk about creative outcomes. So, like for instance, if let's say we wanted to design a space, right? Like maybe IKEA comes to us and IKEA says, "Hey, we want to design something completely new, something like we've never done before, but it should have some hallmarks of IKEA, but it has to just be some new space, and we want it to be fully outdoor." Okay. Well, immediately I have a million questions, and what I'm doing in my head is I'm going through and I'm thinking about, okay, what is good in their eyes and what is not good in their eyes, just as a starting point to like, let's take this conversation further. So we might meet with the design director at IKEA and we'll say, we love the idea. We just want to get a little bit closer to what good looks like in your eyes. So what we did was we looked around in specific areas and the styles that you kind of talked about. And this is what we found. Now, here they are. And I want you to show us what you like and what you don't like and why. Why don't you like this? And why do you like this? So, like in the sense of AI, it's really the same thing now, but we're saying, like, we're the client now. We're saying, hey, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, or this is what good looks like, and this is what bad looks like. So you've given it a black and white contrast so that it can get to where it needs to go a lot quicker. But I love that. And if you don't do that yet, it's so powerful to do that because now you're giving like I said, you're giving AI that frame of reference that it didn't have before you started the conversation. So that's huge.
Yeah, I think examples across the board are the best way to teach. And I mean, at the very core, that's kind of what you're doing is you're trying to teach AI what you want. Um, I mean, in our work in Cloud School and even, with our clients, it's always a lot easier to explain something when you have that example because it like puts it into perspective. It brings it into the real world instead of it all kind of just being like just words in their head. Yeah, I think having examples is always a smart thing to do, especially with AI. Um, Kind of moving on into what I was just talking about before, which is being able to capture context and store it. That way AI can reuse it. I think that is really something that people need to get comfortable with and always be thinking about, because I think sometimes people will repeatedly do the same thing on AI, not realizing that it's happening, like not realizing that they're re-explaining stuff every single time. So just being wary of always knowing, like, okay, I could see myself continuing to do this. Let's capture the context I need here. And AI is great because you can have it do that for you. So if you do a task once all the way through and you realize, like, oh, I'm going to need to do this again. I know I'm going to need to do this again. You can build out the context that you'll need for future tasks, which I think is super powerful and awesome, because it's not like you're not spending a bunch more time kind of building all the little details. It's already all there. You just have to ask Claude to basically summarize it for you. Um, and then once you have that context in a kind of stored manner, you need to be able to give it back to the AI somehow. So I kind of wanted to talk about some of the tooling that is available through Claude specifically that allows you to do this. Um, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways. That's kind of the basis for most of their tools, is like, how can we give the AI context and have it store it? Um, I kind of want to move from the most simple to the most complicated. Just, I don't know, that feels like a smart way to go about it. First thing that comes to my head is like when you're just prompting the ability to upload files, because before AI, that is where everything lived. Everything lives in files, whether it's a doc or a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint. Like, that's just where information lives. So the easiest thing you can do to give AI context is upload a relevant file. I know that's kind of where I started, at least, mainly because that's all that was available when I started using AI. But what do you think about that as like a very basic level of adding context without adding a whole bunch of work?
Of uploading documents.
Yeah, just straight from the chat
Yeah.
interface.
I couldn't be any easier, right? So let's say you've already got a system established. Let's say that it is a design system. Let's go back to the IKEA example, right? IKEA has a design system. That's how you scale design. That's how you make everything look the same no matter where it's at. And so if you have that, you're light years ahead of if you didn't have that, because you're able to just upload a file and give so much context and clarity of what's good and what's not good, and what's exact. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to upload a file, if you have that available to you, is the easiest thing to do. Yeah.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
think that is, it's something that seems really simple, but I don't think a lot of people realize it's possible. I know I've personally talked to people who I've mentioned, like, oh, just upload the file, and they're like, what do you mean upload the file? I can do that. um but yeah, if you're in any AI product that I know of, in terms of like just a chat interface, straight from that interface you should be able to upload files, and it usually takes any standard file. And that is a really good basis for context, especially because a lot of that context already exists, especially within a business. Like, you already have, SOPs and those kind of documents where it's as easy as clicking a few buttons to bring that context in. Um, in that same realm, but kind of hands off for the user, is memory, which I think is a great feature of AI and specifically Claude. In most of your chats and kind of account wide, most AI tools are collecting what they call a memory, and it's basically just keeping tabs on what you're working on. So when you go and start a new chat, it kind of has that background. And this isn't necessarily something you can influence a whole lot, although you can edit memory. Understanding that it's there is good to know, just because you'll go into a new chat and you'll say something. And I've had this experience personally where I am starting a new project and I will ask it to do some task, and it will pull context from an old project that wasn't relevant. So just something to be wary of when we talk about context is like, every once in a while, every few months, I will go into my memory in Claude, and it's basically just a long list of kind of bullet points of things I've been doing or things I often ask for, and I will just kind of clean it up. Just because if you have information in there that's not relevant anymore, it can alter your future conversations. Um, Moving on to the next kind of thing you can actually do beyond file upload is I think the next step is projects, which it usually is in most AI products. In Claude, they're called projects. And it's basically the ability to bundle chats together with some custom instructions and some files. I think that is super powerful because I mean, our world is bundled that way. That's kind of how we think. We all work in kind of these groups of tasks or projects. So having the ability to do that within AI is super powerful. I just kind of wanted to ask you, beyond a file upload, how do you see the custom instructions and kind of the bundling of chats useful in the project setting? How do you see that fitting into a normal business?
Well, I feel like it could fit in every business, any business,
Yeah.
in like various ways. And prior to there being projects, the LLMs that are out there, they like Claude was the first one that had projects. So projects in and of itself was a huge feature when it came out. And the reason why is because like what you just said, it allowed you to store context, and it allowed you to zoom past that initial period of educating AI on what you wanted it to do. Now, especially if it's like a repeatable task, um, so that we'll just call them prompts, so that anytime that you wanted to have a new addition within that same context, you could just go in and start a new chat, and it's already starting from where you left off, and that could be months and months and months of context that you've given it, whether it's in the instruction file or from other chats within the same project. But let's kind of like zero in on the instructions piece. That instruction piece is like a living document of its own, and depending on what the task is, it could save you so much time, so much time. But I'll give you an example of one thing that I still use projects for today, which I love projects because they live in the cloud, unlike cowork. I can just pull it up on a browser wherever I'm at. And like one of the projects that I have is just, and it's kind of a dirty little secret, but I used to watch a ton of videos on YouTube, right? And really just to learn things because I'm constantly trying to keep up with the state of change in our industry and just in other things in general, technology in general. And one of the things that I would do is I would spend a lot of times watching videos, right? And that adds up into time lost if you don't have a takeaway from it. So what I did was I created a project, and within the instructions, I just told Claude, you know, anytime I upload a document, give you a video transcript, like whatever it is that I'm providing you, I want you to give me back the jobs to be done, analysis, so that that thing that I'm trying to learn, you can literally just give me the steps that this person's taking 45 minutes to explain. Just give me exactly what they're saying, and then apply it to me as you know me, or our company, and just give it to me. So instead of me watching a 45-minute video, I can go get the transcript from that video. I can drop it in, and I can say, run this video. And within a minute, it's already giving back to me exactly what's in that video. It's kind of a cheat code to do that. It takes away the entertainment value of watching. Maybe it's like your favorite person on YouTube that you like to watch. Um, but I'll say this: in the time that it used to take me to watch a video, I'm actually to get through maybe 5 to 10 videos of that thing that I'm trying to learn. And that is so huge if you're trying to learn a new skill. And just for another example, if you're trying to learn coding, or if you're trying to learn engineering, or if you're trying to learn fashion, whatever it is, you can get to you can distill all the way down to what you actually need to do that thing instead of watching the 45-minute video or the 2 hour long video. So as a project, I have a running project that's been running for maybe a year, maybe a little bit more, and it's just this like treasure trove of things that I've learned in minutes that it's just been a game changer. So like however you decide to use projects, it's it's like you build it once and then it just keeps giving, right?
Hmm.
Once you get a basic instruction set in there, and you can tweak the instructions, by the way. You could say, hey, the instructions that are in this project, let's add to it. And it'll like boom, it'll give you like an addition to the instructions and you just put it right back in the instructions panel. But as far as like projects and how to use projects, that's really like level two when you're getting into using Claude or any kind of LLM, is learning how to use that, because what you're learning how to do is stack skills. You're learning how to um, build momentum in that whatever that project is, so you don't have to repeat yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
projects are huge.
I think that's kind of the key part to projects is the ability to compartmentalize context. Like I literally just gave an example of what happens if you don't compartmentalize. You then have like a mixture of information, which is what happened before projects existed. It would save some piece of information to like the general memory, and then I would go to do something else and it would use that context incorrectly. So having projects gives you that ability to like bundle context into specific kind of buckets. That way you don't have intermingling context, which can be a problem because you're trying to get it to do a specific task. And if it's, pulling context from your recipe project where, it's has a certain tone, then you're going to have issues. So I think that's kind of the general idea of projects is being able to capture that context and put it into like a little bundle so you don't have to worry about it leaking out everywhere. Um, the next one I want to talk about is connectors. And I think this is a really big one, and it doesn't have quite as much effort needed to set up for a lot of like a full setting up a full project can take a little bit of time at the initial point, but then over time it pays off. Connectors are kind of just a cheat code to context, especially in business, because if you've been running your business for 10 years, you don't have any context that lives outside of your systems that you already have. So being able to tap into those systems with connectors is like it opens up a whole world. I kind of just wanted to get your opinion. I know connectors aren't like brand new, but they're relatively new in the scheme of things. And how have your workflows changed within AI since connectors have come?
Yeah, you talk about game changer. If you know Zapier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you know these no code connector tools that are really just pre-built APIs that you can connect one application to another application. Well, before a Zapier and before the no-code tools, it was all custom development. Like we had to develop custom APIs for have one piece of software talk to another piece of software, right? And such a huge project to do that. And then Zapier came along, and they had a tool that allowed you to using your API distinguish what you wanted another application to be able to do within your application. So you would create a Zap, right, or Zaps for your piece of software, and that also took time. And so like as a user of Zapier, you still have to go in and you still have to do the manual work of going through the if this then that process of thinking about how am I going to use this connector. Well, it's a connector, at its root, but we'll just call it a Zap. You have to still go through the process of thinking how you're going to use it, map it out. Then there's you only get so much usage out of it. Then there's like the paid tier plan and all that. And for what it does, Zapier is a game changer. Like if you use it, don't stop using it just because Claude and AI have developed connectors and MCPs, but because they have, I can just skip that whole line and connect one of the big pieces of software that I use. And for many of you, it'll be probably something that you use in your work capacity. Maybe it's, I don't know, Slack or Microsoft or whatever it is. By turning that connector on, just hitting that toggle switch, you just opened up a whole universe of things that you can do now with your Claude account, because now you have access to it. So I hope that answers the question, but I'd like to get your perspective on it because I know this is such a big point of conversation within all the things that we do. How has it been a game changer for you? I'm curious.
I mean, if I could say it in one word, it would be context. The the amount of information that lives within our other systems is like unfathomable, just because that's where the business has been ran forever. So the ability to tap into that without having to do any of that manual work yourself is like super important and big. And the really nice thing is it's always pulling the latest. Like it's not about when you create a project, like you said, every once in a while you're gonna have to go in and kind of update stuff as it comes along. You know, sometimes SOPs will kind of phase out or we'll change how we do things. With connectors, like you have access to the latest that is in your other system. So you say Slack because we use Slack a lot. The ability to basically tap into the conversations I'm having and then put it into the context of a project is like amazing, because then I don't have to go in and explain where we're at for a certain task or whatever it may be. It's already there through the conversations I've had. Same thing with email. And then talk about connecting to like Google Drive. That's where all of our stuff lives. Every single document we have lives in Google Drive. So the ability to access those without having to go download a file and then upload a file, that saves a bunch of time. And it just gives me more of like a, puts me at ease knowing I can access those things without having to do a bunch of extra work. Yeah, connectors are huge, especially in the work we do, since almost everything we do is digital. It's like everything we have is on our computers, and the more that Claude can kind of access those different parts makes a huge difference in our workflows for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, love it.
Moving on to kind of the last big piece in terms of what Claude gives to a user in order to kind of store context, I want to talk about skills and plugins. And I think this is kind of an interesting contrast to projects, because a project, you're like bundling context and keeping it contained. And I think skill is kind of the opposite, in a sense of like you bundle a skill and then wherever you are in Claude, you can use that skill. I think that is awesome because there is a lot of stuff that you do that is similar between all of your different projects. So having the ability to bundle that into one thing instead of having to explain it in each individual one, I think is awesome. Um, I mean, I love skills and I've been on the skill train for a while, but I kind of wanted to get your thoughts. This is another one it's newer than projects, so I'd actually like to hear your opinion about when skills first came out. Did your mind go straight to like, oh, it's just like a different version of a project? I know that's how it was for me, or did you instantly see kind of the difference?
I didn't. I should have read the white paper on it, is what I should have did before I started using it. But what I did was I I was trying to learn something new, and I'll give an example. This is something that I'd always been wanting to do, which was like really like truly understand how to leverage Google Analytics and Google Search Console, like as a search expert would, to be able to like mine through data and like make connections and understand why things are happening, things like bounce rates and user journeys and things like that. And so one of the things that I did is I went down the rabbit hole with Claude, just full context building, full Q&A, like, hey, help me understand how this works. I need to get into Google Analytics. I want to run a very specific kind of report. Let's tap Google Search Console into this thing too, so that you can look at actual data there. And as I'm going through this, like I'm learning how the two work together, and I'm learning how to get data extracted. And I'm talking about beyond beyond the boilerplate reports that you can pull right from analytics. Like I really need to get some customized analytics so I can do some analysis. And it probably took me a half hour to finally get to the information that I wanted. Then I wanted to turn it into a report, but then I wanted to turn it into a repeatable report so I could use that as like my base. And then if I wanted to then add to that a certain thing, or look at another certain area, it would be very easy. I could just ask it to do that. So what I did was I said, hey, can we make a skill out of this? I just asked Claude that. And Claude's like, of course. and boom, turned it into a skill. I'm like, well, how do I use this? And Claude's like, oh, well, anytime, anywhere you're at in Claude, you just type this in and it will do the same exact thing. And then you just tell it, on top of that, this is what you can do with it, So I kind of stumbled upon it without like actively trying to go and learn about how to use it. Still to this day, I'm not 100% sure if that's exactly how I should be using skills, but I do use them a lot. And I use them how I use them because they make me fast as hell. And that was like one thing that I was able to learn quickly. And then now I can repeat it. Like you said, anywhere in Claude, I don't have to be in a project and I can just pull up that skill and kick it off. So it's huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited to see as they continue to push out new ways of kind of building context. It's always exciting when one of those kind of new big features comes out. A little bit nerve wracking as well because you're not exactly sure how it works. But I mean, for the most part, they usually don't release a new feature unless it really does something. So, um, yeah, that I think that sums up a lot of kind of the information around context in modern AI. Do you have any closing thoughts?
My thought on all this is that you can make all of these things on your own. If you just do a little bit of research and do a little bit of experimenting, you can get up to speed very quick and show others around you how to do it too. And these things that we've talked about, like we're scratching the surface. This
Yeah,
is we are early in the realm of AI and humanity. This is super early, and these tools that we've talked about here are amazing, and you should just play with them and learn how to use them and save yourself time and give yourself time back. And yeah, just keep showing up and learning.
awesome. Well, thank you for your time, DJ.
Thank you, Jace. That was awesome.
Thank you so much for watching the video. If you know your business needs AI, but you're not sure where to start, Claude School for Business is the perfect resource. We've built it specifically for business owners and operators who are ready to integrate AI, but don't know how to take the first step. It is completely free to join, and you get access to foundational courses about AI and the Anthropic ecosystem. It also has a guide to get your business OS set up. If you're interested in joining, check out claudeschool.com or check the link in the description. Thanks.